Hello, this is Myra Elaine from the Buying Space channel, and today I continue my series on Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and I'm in John chapter 7. And let me set the stage. It's during a festival, and it's one of the 3 festivals that every Jew would have gone to Jerusalem to the temple to make sacrifices and enjoy the festival and the gathering. And they would have sang songs on the way to and on the way from and during the festival on all the trails that they would have come to Jerusalem on. And every year Jesus went with his family or with his disciples to the temple. But this year, the Sanhedrin, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Herodians at the temple, some of them had expressed the wanting to unalive Jesus already. So instead of going with his disciples, instead of going with his family, his brothers, he went alone. And he just showed up at the temple. And he started talking prophetically. And all the people were curious about Jesus, and it made the leadership uncomfortable. They already wanted to kill him. They already knew he was a threat to their power structure. So they sent the guards to arrest him. The guards did not, because of what he was saying made so much sense to them. And these guards weren't dumb brutes. These guards were well-educated Levites that had been in their tradition for generations. And they knew what to look for in the Messiah. So that made them even more nervous. So we're in verse 50. I'll start at 49. But this people knoweth not the law, are cursed. Niccademus saith unto them, he that come to Jesus by night, being one of them. So Niccademus had, back in chapter 3, gone to Jesus during the night. They had gone and questioned John the Baptist along the river where he was baptizing if he was the Messiah. He said, no, not me. I'm not the one. The one you want is Jesus. But he didn't say Jesus directly. He said the Lamb of God, I believe. But anyway, so they questioned people to see if they could be the Messiah during this time. So Nicodemus went and met with Jesus at night. He didn't want to be publicly associated with him at this point, because he was so controversial. Doth our law judge any man before it hear him, and knoweth what he doeth? So they were talking about arresting Jesus, but there had been no trial. There had been no questioning specifically about what they wanted to arrest him about. They had asked him tricky questions and would continue to ask him tricky questions and criticize him, but they had not directly brought him before the Sanhedrin and questioned him formally. And Nicodemus was pointing this out. They answered unto him, art thou also of Galilee? Search and look, for out of Galilee abideth no prophet. Every man went into his own house. So his colleagues basically said to him, are you from Galilee? Because Galilee was known as a little, I won't say backwater, but because, there was water, but the Sea of Galilee was there. But it was considered intellectually inferior by the Pharisees and Sadducees. And they're saying no prophet would have come out of Galilee. And there was no prophecy that a prophet would come out of Galilee. Well, first of all, Jonah came out of Galilee. He was from Galilee. But Niccademus was not from Galilee. They were just using that as a slur to let him know if he continued this line of questioning, he would be treated as if he was from Galilee. So basically, they were threatening him and backhanding him and saying, you just better not go there, Niccademus, because Niccademus was not from Galilee. His name is partially Greek. He was a very intelligent, learned man, very respected, which is another reason they didn't want him putting in his voice toward defending Jesus, of all people. Why would Niccademus do that? But his name's partially Greek, so he's probably from a very well-established family with wealth. So they threatened him because they were threatened by Jesus. They weren't having it. Even though Jesus had been circumcised when he was 8 days old in this very temple, and he had taught as a young boy in this very temple when he was 12 years old. He went to the festival with his parents. They lost him because when people travel in large family groups, sometimes the teenagers go off by themselves. The kids would have gone off by themselves. It would have been safe for them to do that because they were in large family groups. It's not like being an only child where you don't let your only child walk around. There were siblings and cousins and aunts and uncles and second cousins and maybe even third cousins around. The whole village of Galilee would have known their family. So it's not like it is today where people don't really know each other and they walk around on cell phones and maybe run into walls because they're not paying attention to even where they are. To that back then, people traveled in family groups. So he got separated from his parents and he was teaching at the temple at 12. This very temple. So it's not like the people in this temple wouldn't have known what happened when he was brought in for circumcision, wouldn't have known that he was born in Bethlehem, wouldn't have known all of these things that they weren't telling the people. But they were going to deny it because Jesus threatened their power structure, their meal ticket. That's what was going on here. They didn't care about the prophecies, if you ask me. They were more worried about their social standing and their bottom line. But Nicodemus questioned it. And I will talk more about Nicodemus later. Probably next week. I probably will not move into chapter 8 until I talk about Nicodemus a little more. You all have a wonderful and blessed day.